Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the ORT Jet webinar series this morning. For those of you who are new to ORT Jet, we are an organization that empowers entrepreneurs in the Jewish community through mentorship, networking, and training. If you would like to know more, please connect with Brenna or myself. Our guest speaker today is Tania Morgan. Tania is the most incredible lady. She gives generously of her time and expertise as a mentor for ORT Jet. Tania has, over the last 25 years, success working with blue chip and local business across multiple categories as a CEO or CMO. Her extensive experience spans local and global markets, where she has successfully transferred business models across international markets. During these challenging times, we need to hear words of inspiration to help keep us focused and motivated. Tania's message talks to this and how best to succeed in business. Tania, thank you for your time and sharing this talk with us. Over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa. Guys, this is the first time that I'm doing a webinar. I was actually explaining it to Lisa this morning, so I'm a little bit nervous, so bear with me. I'm very used to public speaking, but in a context of either being the head of marketing or the head of the organization, knowing my audience really well and knowing what outcome I wanted to achieve. So in preparing this, this conversation, I tried to put together something that would be applicable for you if you were a one-man business, or if you were a leader in a large organization, or if maybe you were part of a team, or even if you had a small business. So yeah, thank you all for your time and for giving me a chance to share my story, because really it really is about sharing a story and trying to just give you some little anecdotes from that story. So I'm going to, and also we are going to do a poll, and Lisa and I tested some things this morning, but I hope we have a technical success with everything that we're going to try and achieve today. So should we go? Just let me quickly share my screen. Lisa, can you see that? Okay, great. So yeah, I mean, thank you to ORT Jet for the opportunity that you've given me over the last few years to mentor people, and thank you for the work that you do. I think you are incredible. I've explained the outcome piece. So I want to do the first poll now, Lisa. So do you think we could ask the poll, if we could ask everyone if you could give us an indication of how each of you feel about change? Does it excite you? Does it scare you? Or do you just tolerate it because you know it's inevitable? So Lisa, how do you want me to do this? Do you want me to come out now?
Yeah, please.
So stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the outcomes, it's all anonymous, so you can just...
Okay. And how do we know when everyone's done it? Do we know how many people are in? I think we quite a few people this morning, not many, I mean, as in few.
It tells me. Okay, so 73% of people say,
yeah.
See that? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I can see it. Okay, great. Okay, awesome. Okay, let me go back to sharing. So now, Lisa, what happens now? You got to get rid of that. Do I get rid of that?
You just share your screen.
Sorry, guys, bear with me. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm really glad that you're all. I'm not going to do the next poll now. This is talking to your why, and I'm sure most of you in the audience, I've seen some of the names. I think most of you know your why. This is going to be talking to some of the things that I believe are quite important. So some of you I've seen. I've got some running friends in the audience. I've got some old colleagues that I worked with in the fashion industry in the audience. So some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm a girl from Port Elizabeth. I love to do crazy things. I've tracked the Himalayas. I have run a few marathons. I love family and friends, and I love to cook and do things like that. And I'm on a journey of transformation. And so I'm not going to talk to that today in terms of developing your own plan for that. But I try my best. These are the kinds of things that inspire me. Adventure, creativity, making a difference. I try very hard to be grateful. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. My loved ones, I have quite a passion for life. I'm trying to learn a lot more vulnerability. I like to think I stay optimistic, although we all have our ups and downs. And these are all things that bring us to, and my background, I come from many verticals. I've worked across fashion to FMCG. I've even sat on an exco at a private bank. And I've worked in different markets across the world. Some of the brands I've worked on are Spitz, Green Cross, Kurt Geiger, Mars Bars, M&M's, Twix, Snickers, Chappies, Endearments. I've worked on Woolworths, I've worked on Petley's, I've worked on, the list goes on. And I've stood on the shoulders of many giants, and I've always been blessed enough to have great teams and family and friends around me. And this is important in terms of what I'm going to share with you, because I suppose we all bring ourselves into an environment and a journey. And I've succeeded and I've failed. So often, and once upon a time, somebody said to me, what is failure? And at the time we had a bit of a debate about it. And so long as you get up, that's success. And some of the biggest lessons in my life, because I'm going to speak to a lot of the successes, but I think it's important. And I'm actually busy doing my MBA at the moment on digital transformation. And in this new environment that we're in, failure is embraced. And we're not talking about if you're a leader in a business and you're allowing people to, if you fail, you mortgage the business. But I think embracing a learning culture and being open to failing, something not necessarily succeeding, but being quite quick to recognize that is really important. And if I talk to some of my running, I did a race on the Great Wall of China, and I didn't finish it. We got pulled off, long story, but I learned more out of that. I learned more out of not achieving running over the finish line on that race than I did finishing 2 oceans. Once upon a time, and again, I do think I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable because I think it is an important part of the story, especially because of the times that we're in. My life was kind of like I had to restart. And I think this is the thing about an entrepreneur, and part of what we've got to learn in this new economy is being able to be an entrepreneur. So be an entrepreneur and always keep on learning. About 11 years ago, I had to start all over again because I'd gotten divorced and I'd taken a voluntary retrenchment package. And I literally, it's going to talk to, if you're struggling at this point in time, and I'm going to talk to transformation because that's the business that I'm actually in. So literally every day I used to get into the shower and I used to say 5 things I was grateful for. I just try to get myself into a pattern of being grateful. And then I contacted my church, and because actually, guys, I'm not actually Jewish, although I feel very close to the Jewish community, and I embrace Judaism, but I was brought up in a Methodist home. And so I contacted my church, and I asked the minister at the church if they had anything that I could do, because I had to get up, and I get a bit emotional when I think about it, because my biggest project and achievement at that point in time was to clean Bryanston. Sorry, I get emotional every time I think about that. I got a team of people together to walk around with black bags to clean the area around the church. And so and we'll get to some of the questions and stuff later, but I think it also speaks to some people who've been, I'm a big admirer of Steve Jobs. And I think if you look to Jobs and his bravery, and when he actually brought in the PepsiCo marketing director, and he was actually shifted out of his own business, and he talks about his shame in in the valley, but that actually created such a lightness in his life in terms of no responsibility, that it created white space for him to go on to the most successful and most creative part of his journey and his career. And that was when he started he bought Pixar and all the rest, and then he ended up buying Apple back. And I'm not going to talk to all of that now. So the topic that we're talking about and the business that I'm in is the business of transformation. And I went to look at the definition, the dictionary definition of transformation. And these are the three things that it gave me: a complete change in the appearance or character of something, a permanent change in a cell that results when DNA comes from a different type of cell, so actual cellular change, and the process of changing completely in terms of character or appearance of something in order to improve it. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about at the moment in terms of the world is, online, e-commerce, digitization. The MBA that I'm doing is digital transformation of the value chain, digitization, all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, all we really are talking about is things are constantly changing. I'm having slight technical hassles here. There we go. So the first set of learnings in this whole thing is that at the end of the day, it always starts with you. So what, again, this is just in terms of how we handle what's going on at the moment. So things like, if you look towards any of the big entrepreneurs, like the likes of the Robbie Brosens of the world, or the Steve Jobses, or any of the great leaders, they normally are very humble. They practice gratitude. They're normally very optimistic. They always see an opportunity. That word fearless comes up quite often. Before this talk, I made a quick contact with my leadership team. Before this, I just asked them for 10 things, because we were talking about 10 things that make a business successful. And I asked each of them to give me some views, so that I didn't come to this talk just with my perspective. And that word fearless came up from every single one of them. So being fearless and being brave, being able to ask for help. I think often that came out of a lot of conversation in terms of learnings. Often we don't ask for help, and there often are people that would be very willing to help. Vulnerability is linked to the asking for help. It's really important that you make the choices and things that you prioritize in your life and in your business will ultimately mean whether you're successful or not. And then the other thing is consistency. And Wags, I can see that you're in the audience. And one of the things I used to always do a lot when I stood in front of my team, especially at ProMeal, my last corporate job as CEO, I used to talk to them a lot about running. And in fact, we actually started a running club there because music, sport, and all those kinds of things are universal languages. But that thing called consistency, discipline, getting up, if you ever run, and I'm not a prolific runner like Mark Wags, I can only say that I've ticked off 1 or 2 big races, but ultimately it's the journey to that race. It's not the day of that race. It's all the mornings that you got up at 5 o'clock when it was raining, and you put your running shoes on and you went. And I always used to say to my team, yes, we can have this great vision and all the rest, but it's important that we come to work every day and we consistently do the little things that are important. And then, in fact, even during my MBA now, we've been speaking about the happiness factor, which is linked to optimism, which is an important part of entrepreneurial life and general life as a whole, is that Harvard has done a study, and the happiness factor and even longevity or quality of life is linked to the quality of the relationships that you have. And so it's really important that you surround yourself with people that share your values, that have integrity and have a similar kind of mindset. And lifelong learning, I mean, there are many quotes on the student and the teacher, but we'll talk to that because that's very prevalent moving into this industry 4.0, 5.0 world. And then reinvention and reimagining. And this is a word, I read my first book by Tom Peters years ago called Reimagine, but this is very much still a theme that is very consistent for us going into this time. The business that I run, sorry, I'm taking a lot longer than I thought I would on this. I'm watching my time, is a business in growth and transformation. If you guys want to go and have a look at my website at some point. And so the thing that I'm really fascinated with is the intersection between people, innovation and transformation in a business context. And in terms of people, I prefer to talk about human realization instead of human resources. And innovation is linked to anything, not just a new product. It's new ways of doing things, new processes, new ways of working together. And then what happens when you put the three of those things together. And I think the wonderful thing about what all of you said is that if you don't create change will create you. And we've got to be able to embrace ambiguity more and more as we move into the current world and the world that we are, moving towards. I'm going to quickly share this with you.
So, for example, and it's because they waited for the change to happen, as opposed to grabbing the bull by the horns, right?
One S, no big deal.
Right. And so, for example, why is it that Netflix invented Netflix and not the movie and television industry? It's because the movie and television industry were protecting their old business model and literally ignorant of the fact that the world was changing around them. The Netflix had this new subscription model, and it was a small company. Blockbuster, which was the 800-pound gorilla, like, you remember when we used to get DVDs in the mail? So, they knew streaming was coming. It just wasn't there yet. And so the CEO of Blockbuster went to the board and said, I think we should explore subscription because this little thing called Netflix is onto something that's going to happen when the technology gets better. And the board wouldn't let him change the business model to subscription because they made 12% of their revenues from late fees. And look what happened. Blockbuster does not exist, except for one store in Northern Canada. And Netflix is the dominant force in television and movies. Why is it that a computer company invented iTunes and not the music industry? It's because they saw the change coming, and the music industry was still trying to protect selling albums in stores because they saw their customer as Tower Records and HMV, whereas iTunes, Apple, saw the customer as the person who actually buys and listens to the music. Why is it that Amazon invented Amazon and the e-reader, and publishing industry did not even invent the Kindle? It's because they're too busy protecting the old business model. So I think if you go down this route of protectionism, of protecting what we have and staving off change, you are signing your own death warrant. And if it's not your death warrant, your business is going to become way more difficult. And another firm or another that may be completely outside your profession. Remember, iTunes, Netflix, all of these were companies completely outside their own industry. In other words, they couldn't even figure out which one of you it's going to be because it won't be any of you. It might be a software company that'll completely eviscerate your profession. And so I think to be the one that says, okay, it won't be the way it was. We can't defend the way it was. And we're going to have to imagine, what if we were to invent our industry now, knowing nothing? What would we do? And again, this goes back to the question of why. Well, why did you get into the industry in the first place? Did you get into this profession because your parents told you to and you can make a good living? You're not going to be the innovator. Did you get in this industry because you love math, you know, you're not going to be the innovator. Did you get into this industry and do you love this industry when you really get to help people re-understand and reimagine how to build an organization? Because when you can understand the language of mathematics, when you can understand the language of a balance sheet, as clearly as you can understand the language of cultural change, it's kind of like that, right? It's the rational and the emotional. And we said it before, which is the numbers are only half a picture of the health of the business. And if you got in this industry to be of service to human beings who are trying to do bigger things for themselves, for their families, for society, for their customers, you might be onto something. So the question is, what value do you offer to the people who buy your product? Now, how would you do that in this new changing day and age? And literally ignore whatever was, because it's irrelevant, because it may or may not survive. The industry, the profession will do fine if you're the ones willing to blow up your own business. But if you're going to protect your business.
And yeah, I think that's the brave comment, is like, you've got to actually be willing to blow up your own business. And that makes me think of Kodak and all sorts of case studies like that. So I'm hoping that as I develop the story, you guys are going to understand what I'm trying to tell. So I'm going to quickly open up the mic and ask anyone, just what do you see there? Do you see an airplane landing, or do you see an airplane taking off? I guess it could be either, right? And that's because I choose to be a little bit provocative every now and again. Can anyone see that? Anyone willing to say what they see? Okay. Basically, if you show that to children, what they would see is 9 dolphins. But you show it to adults, you saw 2 people coupling. And the point I'm trying to really make here is that it's all about perception. It's the glass half full or the glass half empty. And you know, Charles Dickens wrote about it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness, and so on and so on. And that kind of like feels a little bit like COVID. It feels a little bit like the craziness that we are living in now. And I guess the ones that will come out of this will have embraced what it is and try to look for the positive in this, even though but allow yourself to have the moments of reflection on the dark side. I think that's quite important. So yeah, no great artist, and you know, this talks to often we need artists in our worlds and society, because they often are spokespeople and creators, not just artists as we traditionally look at them, either as painters or music makers, people who create. They look at things differently, and another theme that I'm trying to build into this world of transformation and a form of success for today or tomorrow is the ability to be able to create and to look at things differently. And then, okay, I was going to ask a poll. Yeah, I'm not going to do that now. But I think this talks to jobs again, and it talks to another theme, which is just really wanting to make a difference. So we're here to put a dent in the universe. Otherwise, why else be here? And I think every presentation that I've given in the last 20 years, I've included this because I find it inspiring, and I'm going to include it again.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Okay. So yeah, just a few reasons, and I mean, I think I've seen, you know, quite a few really. Sorry, guys, I'm having a slight technical glitch here. I've seen quite a few senior people out of the names that I know, and I'm kind of like talking about the obvious, but it's so important that we continue to look at doing things differently, because that's how we grow our businesses, how we grow ourselves, how we stay relevant. How we can look at new business models. This new digital world offers, if you're collecting data and you're digitizing, you can completely reinvent your business model, and you can create multiple streams of revenue that you didn't even think that you could create before. In essence, moving into industry 4.0 and 5.0, everyone is a software business. And you actually shift the competitive threat. When Lisa and I were talking about me putting together a talk for today, we spoke about Blue Ocean strategy, which is a marketing approach to actually redefining the entire industry. And I think that is an important question when you ask yourself what you're doing in business. What business are you actually in? And I can see that Alan Kellner's in the audience here. And when I was marketing lead at Spitz, I remember saying to somebody that, well, in my interview, they were asking me about ideas, you know, if I had to join them. And I said, well, I don't really know why you bought this business. What vision do you guys have for it? Because I've seen shoes, I've seen accessories, I've seen clothes. So do you want to be a luxury accessories and shoe emporium? Do you want to be a luxury department store? What do you want to be? And coming back to my experience at ProMill, when I joined there, the vision was to be a manufacturer of wet pet food. We redefined that business's vision to become a leader in pet nutrition. If I had to go back into that business now, I would redefine that business to go into pet wellness and care. So the first start of any kind of transformation in a business context is, what business are you in and how do you define your business? And then obviously businesses these days that succeed truly understand their customers or their consumers. And more we're talking about customers, because more and more with e-commerce and online, you're actually owning the entire value chain yourself. And then also, you know, during this time, and I don't talk to it too much, I'll mention it further down the line, but any successful business has got to manage their cash flow. Cash is king. And so making sure that you prioritize where you spend your money. And I think I've always joked, if I come back in my next life and I do the same job, I want to be part of Vodacom or Coke or something like that, because I've always been part of businesses that have had very small budgets. But it's always meant that we needed to make very careful choices so that we could get an ROI and impact on those budgets. And I think in this day and age, more and more, we've got to make sure that we spend money wisely. I'm going to go into, sorry, that's my halfway mark. That was just me keeping time for myself. This is just to share a story. This was my CEO role at ProMill. I joined in March of 2014. This is what this factory looked like. We had no health and safety in place. I got an independent consultant to come in and do an audit for me. We were rated 44%. One of the top retailers had left the business in the December before I joined in the March, because we did not pass their audit, and we had no food safety in place. And pet food is a very highly regulated industry, probably more highly regulated than even baby food. And so I must be honest, I took this. And at the beginning, I was actually quite terrified, and I must be honest, I stayed terrified for quite a while on this journey. This was in the March. There were cans being rusted, and this was what happened in the May. So this was just starting to work with the team to make sure that we got our environment just tidy. And I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to show another video again because I find it, I'm going to just do the video so that I don't talk to it too much. But within 5 months, I restructured that business. So my first 90 days, I collected a lot of data, and that talks a lot to AI today in terms of artificial intelligence. I look back to what we did in this organization over 3 years, and we did it without much IT at all, without too many platforms and all that kind of thing. And it was nothing short of a miracle, and just a group of people that had absolute tenacity. And I'm totally humbled by the group of people that I worked with, the leadership team, and we still have contact today. So restructured in 5.5 months. The only person I didn't have in my team at that point in time was the finance guy, who joined us a year later. And our philosophy at that business was to make sure that it's quite interesting to see this now, because when we spoke, we did not speak hierarchical organizations. And if you look at what's happening today in terms of a networked business and how digitization is affecting everyone, it's flattening things. You're moving towards workforces that are very different, and putting consumer, or as they say now, customer, at the center of all that you do, which was something that we philosophically did at that point in time. At that time, I still called it human capital, but it's all about, at the end of the day, it's actually about winning people's hearts and minds, and you can get into the philosophy of how your brain works and all the rest. But it was really about sharing a vision with everybody and making sure. And we did a kennel building day, and unfortunately I had to choose what I shared with you guys today, but I'm going to quickly just share, and then also give, making sure that we did whatever we did with as much consciousness as possible. I'm going to just quickly share some of this journey with you. And unfortunately, this video, yesterday I was in such a rush. The guy that edited it for me did not do the one with the team in it. So you see a lot of me. Unfortunately, it's not the one with the team, but I can share links with anyone who's interested afterwards.
Built on the foundations of Overberg Agri's animal feed business, ProMeal now manufactures pet food that stands tall in the industry when it comes to what matters the most. But the road towards a world-class operation has had many twists and turns.
In March 2014, when I joined ProMeal, we had 2 brands in our portfolio that were actually unloved and running under the radar. The thing that was really exciting was that we sent our range of products away to Onderstepoort, and we did an independent feeding trial on cats and dogs. And the results came back with incredible results.
In 2014, we decided to go back to the drawing board.
With our business processes in place and our operations stable, the next part of the journey was to relaunch the brands. BOSS, we decided to focus on affordable nutrition with peak protection. We are in fact the first affordable nutritional brand available in grocery in all life stages.
Petley's dog and cat food relaunched in October 2015 with disruptive, emotive packaging and a powerful meat-first strategy. Our recipes contain 40% meat.
A very innovative ahead of curve thought was to lead with more the paleo diet for pets, which is all about protein first or meat first, and very, very low carbohydrates and good carbohydrates in the recipe. We're very excited to raise the bar of the pet food industry in South Africa. So I think I do also have one of my old ProMeal colleagues in the audience as well. That was over a period of time. I think in 3 years, we, in that 3rd year, increased profit by 85%. But if you looked at it at certain points, we increased profits by 200 odd percent. But the most important thing is that we sustained a business. We turned, that was a story of turnaround to transformation, to sale in an environment with all the market leaders. We were up against the likes of Mars Incorporated. Mars's biggest business is pet food. I've worked for Mars before. They've got 3 legs to their business, and we were up against Nestle Purina, and those are the 2 global giants that are constantly vying for number 1, depending on who they've acquired or whatever market share is happening at that point in time. And within those 3 years, we we actually became the #1 pet food. So we were #1 in wet pet food, specifically in dog at that point in time, not cat food. But the 10 things that we did there, so coming back to the theme of this conversation, like what were the success factors? We were customer or consumer centric. I'm obsessed with that. We literally reimagined our enterprise. So we had a North Star, and that was something that every single one of my leadership team, when I asked them this, and I chatted to one of them yesterday, is that, you know, no matter how hard it got, we believed in our vision. And no matter how we got grilled by our shareholders, we believed in the vision and our North Star. And that's not to say that we didn't tweak it slightly, but we kept our North Star. We had a purpose. And part of that purpose was not just about, well, there was so much about it that wasn't about money. It was about making a difference, about uplifting people. That factory is in Atlantis, and it's the most challenged, one of the most challenged environments in the country with TIC and with gangsterism. We took a zero tolerance on substance abuse. We all used to blow at that gate. We took away any, so big, it was a very difficult journey from that perspective, but we hired the right talent. We were fearless and passionate. So talking to mindset and culture, I've got to be quite quick because I'm trying to land a couple of points in terms of what's important into the future. Brand was really important, and you saw that in the story in terms of how we parceled the value proposition, innovation across all elements of the business. Unfortunately, at Promio, we weren't granted the IT piece at that point. But guys, IT and investment in IT, if you're in bigger organizations, if you're not going to do it, you're going to be totally left behind. Making choices, you know, integrity, doing what you say. I think talking to a fact base here. So AI, that artificial intelligence, it talks to the big data and all sorts of things that platforms and the cloud and those kinds of things can do for you now. Again, I've been obsessed with it back there. We did what the best we could with the tools that we had. But again, insights, how you use that data. And then those insights help you prioritize and make choices. So it comes back to that 80-20 principle. And then an efficient operating model. So saying no, again, when I joined, there were a couple of things that were in the pipeline that brands were kind of repositioned, and I refused to do them. I said, I'm not doing them. The business is not stable. You saw what that factory looked like. So making sure that you've got an engine room, and moving into industry 4.0 and 5.0, we're talking about smart factories. We're talking about a supply chain like you can't even begin to imagine what that supply chain looks like. Cash flow, as I spoke again before, and that consistency and breaking things up, even though you've got your vision, breaking things up into small chunks. And anyone who runs knows, well, I don't, and maybe it's because my training program has never been as good as some of the other runners, but I never run 42 kilometers or 56 kilometers. I break that race down into chunks, and that chunks is based on my strategy, whether it's 10 and then another 11 and so on. And that's how we used to do it with the team, literally break it into small chunks. That's how the ant eats the elephant. And then the ability to be agile. So like, yeah, we are now, and you know, there's been COVID, which has fast-tracked digitization, and literally the world that we're moving into now, we have to really just embrace. And we're talking actually about a phygital age. It's the blurring of cyber and digital. And I mean, if I'm going to race through some of these very quickly, but we're moving into a space where we get to land up, but don't be shocked, like humanoids, you know, the merging of robotics, and we want robots to be more like us. So humanoids, a space where mobility and redefining this, and Elon Musk is at the forefront of all of this, where this entire space is changing. How this affects our moral code, how this affects governance in terms of you know, having these robots programmed and all the rest. Then there's this whole impact in terms of the dark side of it. So one can always look, again, that's the yin and the yang, looking at the dark side of the things that are happening in terms of fake news and all that kind of thing, and just being aware of it. And then coming back to, you know, I remember doing a presentation. I actually pulled it up from one of my old files on trying to grab attention. And I've got pictures of TV screens and in-store and all that kind of thing. But now trying to battle for human attention even goes beyond trying to get people's attention for buying an FMCG product or buying a new pair of shoes. It's actually even getting attention in terms of just having people present. But this ever-changing world in terms of all the generations and also the challenges of what happens to organizations where they've got, and I'm not going to go into that today, but where they've got a mix of mature people in their organization and coming in to mix things up in terms of ensuring that you keep your workforce young and you're able to mix the good from both generations or all generations. The fact that we're getting into, we know that there are tons of startups around. I'm not going to go into all of that. Sorry, I can see that I'm running out of a bit of time here. But looking at what kids, I mean, we're moving into an economy where people are really, it's all about sharing. It's all about a better planet. It's all about crypto. It's all about smart cities and all that kind of thing. And it's about embracing the impact of all of that. So literally, one of the things, and we could go into all sorts of discussions around this, but if you look at the Fortune 500, to pull out one of the points on this chart, is if you look at the Fortune 500 companies in 1955, only 12% of those remain. And the life expectancy of most businesses in this day and age is expected to be around 15 years. And I think the thing that we've got to embrace is how the world is changing, how it's going to change the workforce. There's going to be a lot more freelancing, and lifelong learning is going to become something that we have to embrace. I may not have time to show you all of this, but let me try.
Yellow Pages ditched paper for digital. Since 1966, the Yellow Pages' big, thick books have been the most well-known name in the telephone directories in the UK. In most countries, it was a standard accessory in every home and office for over 50 years. Then enter the internet and exit the need for a hard copy of telephone directories. And while Pinterest probably can show you 101 wonderful things to do with your old Yellow Pages books, that's about the end of its relevance for most of us since Google. Slowly, the Yellow Pages began to move its audience over to Yell.com, an online directory platform, but clients were still featured in the paper versions too. However, Yellow Pages did enter the internet race early enough. According to several studies, in 2010, Yellow Pages was the top 5 highest revenue generator of all search items in Google's AdWords program. In 2011, it was still one of the top 50 searched terms in the world. In February of that year, the Yellow Pages Association claimed a $15 return on investment for every $1 spent with them. In 2017, the CEO Richard Hanscott announced what most of us already knew to be a necessary next move: to stop printing the directory from 2019. Although you might feel like it was a bit late, the company hasn't suffered at all by delaying the move, and Yell.com.
Oh, sorry. Wait.
Yellow Pages ditched paper for digital. Since 1966, the Yellow Pages' big, thick books have been the most well-known name in the telephone directories in the UK. In most countries, it was a standard accessory in every home and office for over 50 years. Then enter the internet and exit the need for a hard copy of telephone directories. And while Pinterest probably can show you 101 wonderful things to do with your old
I'm going to stop that there, Andy. So on the recording, the sharing of this, everyone can have a look at that. But that basically runs through a series of case studies on going back to what Simon Sinek was saying, blowing up your business model and making sure that you embrace change. It'll talk to Netflix. It'll talk to Lego, which is also a really lovely case study. I've got Siri doing strange things in the background here. Just wait. This is where, so I'm always technically good, even though I try and learn digitization. I'm teasing. So what are the learnings that we get from that in terms of where we're at in the businesses that have been successful? All customer centric. All of them are able to reimagine their business model, and from that, from understanding trends and what's happening in the world, they can reimagine their enterprise and their business model. Most of them are focused on so again, on their why. What is the purpose? Why are they there? And if you also look at talent these days and the kind of talent that you want to attract, they want to know, like, what difference are you making in the world? What are your policies on you know, how you impact the planet? How do you behave? Are your products decent? Are they good? Are they healthy? So, and then how do you treat your workforce? So purpose is really important. You know, making sure that your team you're working with the right people. And also, look, business models are changing in terms of freelancers and all the rest, but making sure that you allow people to realize their full potential in terms of how you deal with people, a growth mindset, which links to being fearless and passionate. AI links to insights in that fact base again. So trying to draw an analogy between the traditional business model and the digital business model going into the future. Brand becomes critically important. So, and again, Lisa, I'm not going to get into too much of that today, but developing the brand. I mean, even if you look at the likes of, you can look at Uber, you can look at all sorts of, you know, Airbnb and different business models, and those they were really important. But there were also a lot of other startups in those environments that didn't succeed as well as they did, because they didn't develop their brands well enough. Innovation, constant innovation, and innovation across all things, not just products. And again, making choices and lifelong learning. So talking to that whole concept of entrepreneurs, so being an entrepreneur and learning all the time. So if you can start to think of data, if you move into the terminology linked to digitization, if we can think of data as the new oil and AI and all that AI is the electricity, and the fact that every company can become a software company. And I was going to share some interesting case studies and thoughts and IP on the pet food industry and how one could reshape that business model. But unfortunately, I'm not going to share that today, because that's part of IP and a project that I hope to collaborate with somebody on. But if you can look at things from this perspective, every single company becomes a software company. So if you look at software as a service, and more in the fintech space now, you get banking as a service. So that how those kinds of things redefine business models. And then talking very quickly to the fact that we have to keep on learning. You know, I am so grateful. I had somebody in my world inspire me to do this MBA, and I'm so grateful for it, because I kind of thought, you know, I kind of half understood the stuff, but it's been such an incredible journey to actually be learning properly again. And we have to carry, this is a theme for anyone who wants to stay relevant and anyone who wants to embrace the world that we're in and the world that we're moving into. We have to keep on learning. And then looking at those three elements, trying to summarize the things that are important for transformation and for business models and so forth today. It's the intersection of digital as the oxygen, customer at the heart of the organization, people as the soul, and then how you build your purpose and the leadership and the culture and the mindset in terms of how you put those three pieces together. So your customer experience, your people architecture, and your business model. I'm not going to go into the detail of this, because I think the entire presentation has been speaking to a growth mindset in terms of you know, at the end of the day, we used to often, as a leadership team at ProMill, when we were doing interviews, and you know, if we look back to some of the mistakes we made in terms of, not that they were bad people, but the people that we brought into our organization that didn't succeed were often the ones that didn't necessarily have the correct mindset. So at the end of the day, attitude will always outperform aptitude, even though ultimately you want both. I'm not going to go into all of this. I think we've been speaking for quite a while. I'm willing to share these slides afterwards. We've spoken about purpose and this entire thing in terms of bigger organizations. One of the biggest critical success factors is leadership. Fish rots from the head down. And I think in South Africa, we often see that, if we don't have our president and our leaders in a certain kind of space, unfortunately, it impacts everybody. So, and we speak a lot about, and a lot of C-suite leaders don't always understand digitization, although most in these days do, but it's an entire new way of working. And I think I'll leave you with good old Jobs, who I adore so much, because I think it sums it up so well, is that we all just need to stay hungry and stay foolish. And then I suppose we can open up for questions, and maybe we can do this poll, because it will help me. This is my first webinar. Would we mind, Lisa, doing this poll? I managed 9 minutes before the time. Thank you, everyone, for listening to me.
Sorry, that's the results from the first poll. I just have to get to the other polls. Sorry, I'm not so...
No, it's all good. This is our test, Lisa. We've done okay. Thank you so much for, Okay, great, guys. Thank you for being kind to me. Thank you for allowing me the time to share my story. Are there any questions or any short stories that you want to share? Charlie.
Hi, Tanya. Hi, everyone. I just have one question for you, Tanya. What has been your greatest challenge, firstly? And secondly, what has been your greatest, like we always have our careers are not supposed to be, how can I say, like our slave work. You need to find joy in it. So what brings you joy in your career?
The people. and I suppose that's why my current job, I'm going to get emotional. That's why my current job is so hard, because I'm alone. And so choosing the right clients to work with the people. So transformation, seeing how you can make a difference, seeing people enjoying what they do, getting excited, creating things. Those are the things that I love to do.
Thank you.
Tanya,
sorry about the emotion and the tears. You know that I used to do this regularly in front of my staff at ProMeal. When we got our BRC food accreditation, and we got a AA, which is like 1 away from 5 stars, so like 4.5 stars. I stood in front of my staff and I cried because I was so proud of them. So I do tend to get a little bit emotional. Yes, Lisa, sorry.
Does anybody, if nobody else has any questions, I wanted to say that the Simon Sinek little video that you showed about Blockbuster and Netflix, I can resonate with that. I actually worked for a long time in the UK for a company that basically was Netflix in the UK, and our main goal was the downfall of Blockbuster. So it was quite interesting. But I just wanted to thank you, Tanya, for your honesty, most importantly for your time and dedication to ORT Jet, but also for taking us along your journey with you today, just with such honesty and enthusiasm as well. And thank you from us. It was really it was was an honor and a privilege to listen to. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Robbie, yes, of course you can. Lisa can share my details with you. Sorry, there was a question. If anyone wanted to connect with me, Lisa, if anyone wants to connect with me directly after the webinar, you can share my website and my contact details, not a problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
keep
you.
well and keep safe.
Okay. Cheers. Thanks, guys.